What I want to get into, though, is when I thought about where Christian picked up that ball and started his run, I don't remember seeing that against Saudi Arabia once. And I can't remember. I just can't. He didn't play against Japan, but I can't remember, like, when do we ever get him and supply him the ball on the sideline where he can do his thing and run at people? It always seems like we try to, or he picks up the ball centrally. And that's a problem for me, because that, for me, is when Christian Pulisic is at his best, 20 yards away from goal on the sideline, and just starts to just weave through people, because they have to be a little bit more careful on how they tackle him. It's not in the middle of the field. Charlie, go ahead. It seems like you're ready to go.
I mean, it's just a broken record, is what we've been saying this whole time. Isolated, getting out wide by the touchline. Look at the rest of the players within the Chelsea squad, where they were on the pitch. They weren't all conjumbled into one spot. Everyone was spaced out, and they let Christian Pulisic be wide, and he stayed wide. He didn't come inside. He didn't think, oh my gosh, I got to get inside and get on the ball. Yes, when you create that space for yourself, naturally 1v1, you can go to the end line, or you can cut inside, which he did, and still drive forward. And not everyone was coming to him. That was a space that, when he's at his best, he takes advantage of. That's exactly what he did. So for me, that's what we need to see with the U.S. Women's national team.
Is it possible, though? Because if we have Antonee Robinson healthy,
yes, you don't need to rely on Antonee Robinson to create chances.
But if our outside backs are the ones creating the width, or our wing backs,
no,
then that takes away Christian Pulisic. I'm just saying.
I know, but if you're Christian Pulisic, if you're any talented winger, you look at the outside back, you go, you can get around me when I come inside, when I need you to create that space. You're another option. Otherwise, you're a left back. Stay there. This is my
actually, by the way, it's not, and as the resident left back here, guys, because not because I was the best, but because you guys couldn't. They put me there because of how good I was at it.
Because you're the only left footer on the podcast. Yeah, relax.
That's true. I mean, my left foot is my lesser of bad feet, so they put me there. The whole point of, like, if you have a classic winger that paints the sidelines, right, where their shoes are white all game long because they're on the sideline, and that's not Christian Pulisic, but the traditional, like Eddie Lewis, right, sat out on the touchline always, or even DeMarcus Beasley preferred to be out on the touchline, get isolated and run at players. You have to be at an angle with them as a fullback, so you don't sit on the same line as them. You're tucked in a little bit to create those angles of passing, or you do, where you run up and through, and they're able to check back and get the ball at their feet still on the touchline. You learn to find where your space is to get forward, and maybe you're running inside, or on the occasion that they do come into the pocket, you're getting around them. But it doesn't have to just be where the width comes from the fullbacks. The fullbacks can make those diagonal runs through the midfield that allow a player like Christian Pulisic to check back on the touchline and have that free pass from a center back. We saw that a little bit with which of the two games was it? I think it was Vines was running way up the field and allowing Gio Reyna to come back and get it on his feet just to clear out that space if he's not getting the ball in good spots but wants to be out on the touchline. So it's just a way of working together that you have to make adjustments. Just because both play wide or better wide doesn't mean that they neutralize each other, so to speak.
But Heath, how many times have you been in a match, though, where you don't even need to make that run? They're not sitting in a low block, and it's very tough to break down. That you are saying, go ahead and do your thing. I'll play you the ball and I'll give you that space. I'm not going to bring anyone else into that.
A lot.
Right.
If the game dictates that you've got to sit back, and the game dictates that, like, you've got a local Rodriguez from Guatemala sitting up on the half line, that, like, okay, my first job is to defend anyway. And maybe the game is presenting a situation where you're going to be able to get the ball to him, and the game's going to happen so fast that you're not getting up and around. You don't need to provide the width. They're not sitting in a deep block where you need to create a 2v1 in those situations. A 1v1 is good enough for a player like Christian Pulisic. If he can get him isolated and where he can put his head up, take his first touch at his defender, that's better than any 2v1 scenario that we're going to present with Jedi Robinson.
Do you think that, and I love this conversation because it's nuanced and there's a lot to unpack here. I wonder at times, though, and it's a bit of a conundrum, because let's take Japan. And I know Christian didn't play against Japan, but Gio was there and Brendan was there. And we had obviously good attacking options in those winger spots. And sometimes I wonder, was it Japan doing a good job of not allowing us to have that space? Because Gio only had a couple opportunities, especially in the first half, where he ran at guys. And when he did, I remember them being quite successful. Or if we unlocked something on the right side, Dest or De La Torre got out wide, there was space there to be exploited. And then Japan kind of figured it out, and we got stifled. We couldn't get to those same areas consistently. So I wonder if it's an opponent or if we, as our system, isn't set up to really make sure that those guys get the ball in some ways. I also want to add, when you think about some of the best players in the world and the teams that they play for, and I'm thinking Messi, it's an easy fallback, but he walks around a lot. And I know that when he walks around, that he's still occupying a lot of attention from a lot of players, right? And so him by walking does help his team defensively because they still have to put 2 or 3 guys or keep an eye on him, because if he gets the ball in transition, they're dead, right? They can't go 1v1 with him. Do you think that maybe we're so honest? And I did this with Kansas City when we played with Preki. Like Preki, I don't want the guy to defend because I want him to save all of his energy to go forward. Do you think there might be some value in just saying, hey, Christian, just cheat. Just stay high and just see what the other team does. We don't need you to come back. We're good enough to defend with 9 or 8 or whatever it is, and maybe less, depending on the numbers in the transition. Just stay high and see what happens. Make them make a decision now. Let's be in control of the tactics instead of always being reactionary. And I wonder if we have the balls or the courage to actually try that and tell some of our guys just to cheat and hang up out and see what the other team does to react. We don't have to do it for 90 minutes. Nothing's set in stone. The game's fluid. But do you think there's some value there, Charlie? I'll come to you on that in terms of just maybe just like Christian, just stay high, just see what happens. And maybe we can get you the ball in ways that we haven't been able to do that consistently.
I think there are times when you can play like that. But I think of myself in terms of how I was defending as a 9, or if I was playing in a 2-striker system. I think in this day and age in the world's game, you cannot play with just 10 players, one player not expected to defend at all. I think every player has some part to play in whether it's shaping the press, whether it's forcing the ball to one side. I just feel at this stage, you cannot play with one player who just refuses to defend, no matter who you are. Unless you're scoring 50 goals a season, then go ahead. But realistically, that's not happening. I think Christian can still find balance in defending and then finding the spots in transition, at least the starting positions, to be ready for the transition. It's not that you have to be actively defending at all aspects of the game. It's when the ball gets by you, it's switching to the opposite side. Now setting yourself up so that if there is a turnover, you're the first option and you're in space. So I think it's about just the starting position of when you're out of the play, when you're not involved in the active defending, being ready for transition, and then everyone else knowing this is the ball we got to play to Christian, to his feet, so he can get going and running at opposing back lines. Because that's when Christian's at his best, when he's in transition and the defense isn't set yet. It's in that position where he can just run at somebody 1v1. He beats that one player. And now the defenders are still recovering. They're not set in a block. That's when Christian's at his best.
Yeah, I know. I like that. Heath, I want to hear from you with regard to this, because I think there's something about just taking that risk at times. Like, hey, I don't know what minute, whatever they want to do it, but just to put some pressure on the other team to now have to solve a problem that we're presenting. And I don't feel like we presented enough problems, at least in our last 2 games against Japan and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I'm trying to write off these last 2 games because I think that was attempting to play in a way that we haven't played in a long time. And the more I reflect on that holistically as like even a couple of years, it seems like we got to qualify. We got to the summer tournaments last summer, and then we were into qualifying, and we just sort of wrote off. We went for function over fashion. And I think this was an attempt to go down a route of being able to present something different to teams, of saying, hey, we're struggling to break the low block. Let's build up then here and try to pull them out of that space a little bit and try to draw them further up the field and realize, okay, we can't do that either. If they press us, we're in trouble. If they sit in a low block, we're in trouble. Now, that might be playing into the hands of another team, but I feel like we were tinkering a little bit with that space. But like you said, Jimmy, the game is fluid. And sometimes you go with the game plan, and you know that there's a few players on every team that go with the game plan with I kind of buy this game plan, but I'm probably going to go out there and
I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah, I'm going to find the ball and I'm going to do what I want. But Charlie's right. The game is different now. Players on the field are too skillful, and the game is too fast now to have players just taking plays off, unless you've got an X factor that's going to deliver game in and game out, right? Or you can maybe have one player that's cheating a little bit, and all defenders cheat a little bit, right?
Let's think about this though a little bit though. I mean, when I knew, and lean on experience here, when I knew that one of our attackers wasn't going to defend, it almost gave me more comfort as a defender knowing that we're all on the same page. Like at this moment, in these particular situations, whatever player, Preki, we'll just say Preki, he's not going to defend. So we're not going to rely on him to do that. But when we get it, we have to find him. And then it's on him to create that energy to get into the pockets that can help us transition and for him to do his things. And I feel like we're so honest defensively, and we're all working really hard. Doesn't mean we're always working together, but we're working really hard to try to win it back. And I don't always think we're being as efficient with our energy as we can be, and also not being as threatening as we can be, given we can all see how vibrant our attack is when it's in full stride and it's getting the ball in good spots and running at defenders. But these teams are going to sit in the mid block and not allow that to happen. So what do we have to do? And I think there has to be a little bit of cheating involved. When I say cheating, everybody, I mean just that a couple guys aren't in and having to defend. They're just staying a little bit higher. They're pulling. They're making the other team have to think and what they're going to do, and that will hopefully open up pockets of space. I haven't really entered into that phase of tactics because I haven't seen it from Greg. There's just no way he's ever going to be like, oh, I'll let that player do whatever the hell he wants. But I'm not asking for 90 minutes of it. I'm asking for 5 minutes, 10 minutes here or there just to see what happens.